Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. Like Hessa said, we are so excited that y'all keep coming back. This is session 4 out of 5. We can go to the next slide. We're going to be focusing on community involvement and marketing. And after this, we only have one more session. And Ann Savage is going to be wrapping it up with best management practice, doing a recap of what we've, talked about, what we've learned so far. And but just because the next week is the last session in this webinar does not mean that this is the last time we can see one another. Hessa is going to provide an evaluation form next week about this whole webinar series. And one of the questions is, do you think there should be follow-up? And like, what should that look like? So we are very committed to you and your journey through agritourism. And I think I can speak for the speakers here today. They are as well. Let's go to the next. There we go. Great, right? Good segue, Taylor. It's like you and I work together. We have 4 speakers today. I am the least important of them. But we have got Erica Cauldron, and she is with NCDA. We are so excited that she's here with us now, but moreover, we're excited that she's with NCDA. She's the agritourism marketing specialist, and those of you who follow along agritourism happenings in the state, that position was open for a while. We are so excited that Erica is in that position. She has ag experience. She has restaurant experience. She has market development experience. It's like everything she's done in her career has led up to this moment so that all of her expertise can be, channeled into agritourism in North Carolina. She is an alum of the University of Central Florida. We will not hold it against her that she did not go to a North Carolina school. However, she did study hospitality management and marketing. So as a hospitality and tourism professor, I like that. Erica, thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you.
Yay. We also have Jane Lee Rankin. Lee is playing sort of a dual role for us tonight. First of all, her permanent role is that she is the owner of Apple Hill Farm. And if you have not visited Apple Hill Farm in the high country of North Carolina, please put it on your bucket list for this summer. There are alpacas, there are goats. I want to say there's horses. There's just a lot of animals, but did you hear me say there are alpacas? Go to the website. There's all these alpacas like looking you in the face like this. And Taylor, when you come to visit North Carolina, we're going there. We're absolutely going there.
Absolutely.
Lee serves as the president of the North Carolina Agritourism Association, Networking Association. And that organization has been around a while. I'm so pleased that it has had this longevity and serves as a trade association for farmers who engage in agritourism experiences, who offer these farm experiences. She's going to tell us a little bit about the association, how you can get involved, and the services that they provide. There's me. I'm a tourism professor up at App State. This session tonight will be closed by one of my colleagues, Dr. Danny Capps. Danny has just finished her first year at Appalachian State. She's an assistant professor in hospitality and tourism management, and her background, she spent time in Tennessee, in Nashville, specifically opening restaurants. She got her PhD from Texas Tech, and she's originally from Arizona. But y'all, she just finished her first high country winter. So we're really proud of her, and she's not scared. So I'm really excited about that. She's a great colleague. I'm really, really happy that she's going to be here with us tonight to talk about storytelling and how storytelling will sort of bridge that gap and encompass all of the community involvement and networking that we're going to be talking about, how your personal story can connect with the regional story. Okay, with that, I am going to hand it over to Miss Erica. Thank you so much for being here. Oh, also one more bit of housekeeping. As Hessa said, please keep your mics muted unless you have a question. Well, that's not true. Please keep your mics muted. And when you do have a question, drop it in the chat. And after Erica finishes, we'll address your questions for her. Same goes for Lee. After Lee finishes speaking, we will address your questions for Lee, and so on. We'll proceed that way. So thank you again for being here. And Erica, really, really can't wait to hear what you're going to be saying.
Thank you, Carol. And hi, everyone. I just want to say thank you to the whole team at Uplift and NC State's Tourism Extension Program for inviting me to be a part of this series. I joined the Department of Agriculture in the fall, and since then I've had the chance to join or to meet with a lot of agritourism operators, to visit a few farms, and also learn more about them and the activities they host. So I'm more than happy to share some of the success stories I've learned about and building strong partnerships. And thank you, Taylor, for next slide. So as you can see, there are many different ways to share your agritourism activities with your community. And sometimes your activities might fall into a few different categories that give you a chance to not only increase revenue for your farm, but also preserve the land and educate consumers about how our food is grown. And I would say, in my opinion, the more these categories overlap with the educational component and in a fun way, all the better, right? And since every farm operation is different, we have so many creative ways of telling your story and building an experience for your visitors. So you can emphasize visits to local producers that offer, for example, farm to table dinners, workshops, school field trips, and you can even offer to rent your space to local service providers, fitness instructors, artists looking for exhibit space, and so on. And the wonderful thing is that as you begin to add activities to your farm, you don't have to do it alone. As someone who speaks a lot or spends a lot of time meeting with business owners throughout the state, I'm happy to share some of the common threads amongst successful partnerships that I've seen in the last several months. So one of the things that I've observed when it comes to community partnerships and your visitors' experience is that when you have more products and activities available, your visitors are more engaged, so they stay longer and they spend more money, right? And well, that's certainly true. I think we can easily get overwhelmed with the product development or just finding the time and the staff available for hosting certain events. But that's what's great about finding the right partners to collaborate, because then you can offer products and experiences that complement both of your customers' needs. But again, you don't have to do it all by yourself. So I really like to emphasize the importance of starting with a solid plan before reaching out to potential partners or sponsors, if that's the case. And as I mentioned earlier, there's so many ways to tell your farm's story and create a wonderful and unique visitor experience, right? So taking some time to map out your goals and hone in on your target audience and what you want to be known for will help you sort of eliminate some of the things that maybe aren't the best fit for your farm experience and make room for the things that are a great fit for you. And when it comes to fostering those relationships and collaborating on events, you can begin to craft messages together that will resonate with both of your audiences. So in essence, understanding your customers and what you want to be known for will help you align yourself with organizations and overall experiences that complement each other's mission and values. So this leads me to talk about the power of community partnerships. Thank you. So I'd love to share some examples of successful partnerships that I've seen or read about where businesses collaborated, combined different skill sets and resources in order to create that great visitor experience. But before I get into that, let me just say that sometimes we really are just in the thick of it. As a small business owner, you're managing a small team, and I know that your time is so limited. And I'll admit, sometimes great ideas do come to us when we're under pressure, but we don't want to feel that constant pressure every day of the year, right? So I must say, it really is worth carving out just a little bit of time to plan your promotions or your collaborations, because that can really make a difference when it comes to hitting your revenue goals. That could mean planning month by month, or maybe just planning for the season if you're only open a few weeks out of the year. But taking an afternoon, for example, to plan these things will give you and your potential partners room to build up to those events and also budget for them, whether it be a social media collaboration or let's say a workshop that you're co-hosting with one of your neighbors. Because I don't have to tell you all, expenses add up quickly, right? And sometimes we just don't realize how time consuming an activity will actually be. So it's helpful to sort of take a step back and start by crafting your marketing plan, as I said, then identify local partners and existing connections. And after that, you can begin to refine or sort of tailor your proposal for collaborations or sponsorship requests. And of course, plan and budget for those promotions, right? And once you can put it on paper, you begin to visualize these events and what resources you have available or who you want to partner with to make the season a successful one, right? So identifying local partners that share similar values and serve overlapping target audiences is crucial, in my opinion, for successful collaborations. It's always worth exploring what service providers are already in your area that would complement your farm's activities so that you can create those cross promotional campaigns. So for example, you can find ways to highlight local artists, like I mentioned earlier, chefs that will come and host cooking demonstrations, fitness instructors, professional photography sessions. There are endless opportunities that we can explore and ways to use your working farm as a space that generates revenue for you, that preserves your land, and provides fun and educational experiences. So when I read about Bluebird's Farm, for example, I just fell in love with this collaboration. They offer track out and summer farm programs, farm camps for children with autism. And Five Hearts offers therapeutic and recreational services for families with special needs. So through a partnership like this one, families can benefit from interactions with animals and access to locally sourced foods. So I just thought this was a really neat way to leverage existing connections within their community to really amplify those agritourism initiatives. So when we're thinking about local partners and existing connections, also think about the network of people that could help you promote your activities. I saw this partnership in a few different areas, so that's what led me to kind of plug that into. So earlier I touched on a few different categories of agritourism and how they can often overlap and how there are so many ways to tell your farm's story. Sometimes we want to customize a collaboration pitch, for example, or a sponsorship request so that we're addressing not only our needs, but our potential partners' specific needs and interests. For instance, the event you see here was hosted by the North Carolina Sweet Potato Commission, the Department of Agriculture, and the goal of this event was to help sweet potato growers highlight the vegetable's versatility and teach people how to cook with it and prepare both sweet and savory dishes. So essentially, this was a farm to table dinner, but we tailored the event to meet the needs of the sweet potato growers, the event space, and also give attendees a great experience that they're going to talk about with their friends. So we planned a workshop with a team of chefs. We invited journalists to try the dishes, learn about sweet potatoes, and of course, spread the word through blogs, social media posts, and magazine articles. So as you can imagine, this was just one event that can easily be replicated to highlight your farm's seasonal produce, where you get in-person interactions and online engagement opportunities by going live on social media. You can offer chances to win a 5-course dinner, for example, and all of which your online followers will, again, share the event info with their friends and family. So if this is something that you want to do, then over time, you start establishing credibility within your community because you have experts collaborating on successful events with a great attendance rate. And this certainly helps when it comes to pitching sponsorship proposals rather, that could help expand your reach because these events build momentum and your repeat visitors look forward to the next event or celebration, as do your partners because they also benefit from the activity. So speaking of the next celebration, like I said, there's many ways to celebrate seasonal produce and educate visitors on how our food is grown, how it's caught and raised, or how our clothing is made. You know, I had to plug that in with the Got to Be and See program. So as we get ready to jump into the summer months, I want to say, let's take a step back and map out our goals and some of the ideas for potential collaborations, especially if you know that the summer is just going to fly by and then suddenly fall's around the corner. And for many of us, that's the busiest time of the year. So it's definitely worth taking some time now to reflect on what worked last year, what didn't work, and to sort of guide our next steps, right? So that includes taking inventory of the resources at hand, who you may want to consider partnering with. And this is all part of what will help you continue to refine or tailor your proposals when it comes to finding partners or sponsors, for your activities. And this certainly gives you and your potential partners time to get creative, to brainstorm new ideas and, set realistic timelines, and a chance to budget for everyone involved. So after you visualize these promotions and collaborations, really get intentional about designing your year, focus on opportunities that generate revenue, but also align with your passions and what your audience needs. And finally, set your standards for collaborations and partnerships that are going to really complement your farm's activities. Think about the initiatives you're most excited about, and team up with local businesses that share those similar values and maybe even serve overlapping target audiences so that you can create awesome collaborations and take some of the pressure off of you. Because I think that's the part of the reason why you want to collaborate is to just take some of that pressure off of you. And finally, I'd like to end with a few words from our Agriculture Commissioner, Mr. Steve Troxler. Agritourism attractions provide excellent learning opportunities to help people of all ages better understand where their food and clothing come from and have fun at the same time. So I hope you all have a chance to check out some of the tools in the last slide there's a QR code that takes you to a resource hub that Ann Savage has been adding on to, and it just gives you some rules and regulations on agritourism, safety tips, videos, and podcasts. So thank you all.
Fantastic. Can you go back to the QR code? Yeah, just have that up there because I don't know about everybody else, but I was a little distracted by the wiggly lamb tails and I didn't really even notice there was a QR code. So can we see the wiggly lamb tails again?
Thank you.
Thank you. And well, let's move on to our next fabulous speaker. Thank you, Erica. That was really, really beneficial. Some very creative, innovative ideas about how to partner. And I love what you said about, planning. Let's get a plan together now because without a plan, you're not going to be as effective partnering unless you know your own plan. And also to think now for what are your goals for collaboration going to be for the summer. I know a lot of us who are so busy just sort of keep doing and doing and doing without having like clear goals of why we're doing what we're doing. And so I really appreciate that reminder for us to think about our goals specifically for collaboration. With that, we will turn it over to Lee. Thanks again for being here. And if you could like bring an alpaca in, that would be a lot of fun too.
Okay. I wish I could bring an alpaca to everything that I do, but I bring alpaca energy with me because I am one with alpaca. So there you go. Okay, so the North Carolina Agritourism Networking Association. So we are a partner, right? We are a collaborator partner for lots of agritourism farms. I mean, I consider us one of the strongest, besides the Department of Ag, where we have Erica, we are a partner for agritourism farms. So who do we serve? We serve farmers wanting to open their farms for agritourism. And we also serve vendors and organizations that support farms wanting to open their farms to agritourism. So our goal is to educate, provide resources and support, create space for networking. And one of the ways that we do that is through our farm tours. So we yearly do a summer farm tour and we have an annual conference every February. We rotate around the state. We're in the Raleigh area right now doing what we're doing. And our conference is a one-day farm tour followed by a one-day conference. And then we switch to a different area. So in 2026, we're going to be in the western part of the state. So we move around, right? That's what we do. But at our annual conference, one of the things that we do, and this is like so important to know, is that we have breakout sessions where we focus on different things like legacy of your farm. How are you going to set it up legally to leave your farm the way it needs to be left? How are you going to deal with scammers? That was an issue that we talked about this year at our conference. It's gotten to be a really big issue for farms through our ticketing agencies, through our websites, and through phone calls that we're getting. Even in our organization, we're getting scammers and trying to stay ahead of that. So we really take that role of updating farmers about what's happening there. Social media updates, and we switch it around based on what our organization and our members are asking for and what's happening in the world and what needs to be updated. So one other piece of our conference is that we have a vendor area. So in our vendor area, for instance, this year we had food vendors, so people that you could go to buy a kettle corn machine or a popcorn machine or a cotton candy machine, or those things that where you decide you want to do an event and you want to have cotton candy, where do you get that from? And how do you know what's out there without having to look at things that are not industry specific? So we had food vendors, we had ticketing companies that were there that are promoting ticketing platforms where if you want to have people pay before they come, they can buy their ticket online through your website, through their ticketing, and then they show up to your farm. It's a great way to control the inputs of people on your farm. We had a stuffed animal vendor. So if you had cute little goats with wiggly tails, where do you get a cute little goat that looks like the one that they just fell in love with for them to take home with you? Or alpacas, right? Um, we had an insurance broker. I just found out that my agritourism insurance they're no longer going to be in the business of agritourism. I have 1 month to turn it around. I called the lady that was at our conference last year. um, People that are selling jams and jellies, not the value added, like making them for your farm, but selling them, and actually you can put your name on it. So things like that you wouldn't necessarily see someplace else, or might take a long time to find it, that's going to happen there. And then the real magic that happens with everything we do is the connection between the people, right? So we're out here with our farms open to the public, and boy, is it nice to sit down to lunch and say, yeah, what a season, or that rain, or oh my gosh, if I have to answer a strawberry question one more time. I mean, to have that camaraderie in the business that we're in is immeasurable. It's like it's invaluable in terms of having that. And our farm tours, as we move around the state, we generally, like the summer farm tour, it's $139. It's self-driving for summer, but it includes your lunch and your dinner. So there's lots of time to network with other farmers, and we'll go to 4 or 5 farms. In fact, usually our lunch and dinner are a farm where we're eating lunch or we're eating dinner, so that you get that experience of being out on a farm, and you get to see the stuff that people are doing, the flowers that they're planting, or how they're doing their strawberry fields, or how they're opening up their farmers market, or the activities that they have for children, how they set it up. And it's out of seeing 5 different things that maybe 4 of them have nothing to do with what you're doing, that the creativity that drives all of these operations gets like cued into being like the next thing. Oh, we could do XYZ, or wouldn't it be nice if we could do this in this area of our farm? So anyway, that's what we do. We're doing an Empower Hour series via Zoom right now, monthly, and it's currently the second Thursday of the month. We'll do one of those and have 2 or 3 farmers on that are doing field trips, and sort of drill down into what does it take to set up to do field trips, and how hard is that to do, and how are you doing it? Or how we might do one on photography on the farm. Like, how do you set that up? If you're not the photographer, how do you set that up with a photographer? And what kind of rules do you have to have in place for the photographer, for the people that are coming to your farm, and how do you make that work? So that's who we are and what we do. And you know what? I don't know about you guys, but farmers are the coolest people on the planet. Sorry, Carol, I'm going to just go off on this one. We are the coolest people on the planet, and we get together. We have so much fun. So it's also really a fun group to hang out with. So we encourage you all to join us. Come do, if you're just starting and you don't have a farm yet, and you wanted to come to our farm tour in the summer and see what we do and hang out with us, and then maybe the conference is something that you want to follow it up with and come to the conference in February. But we're a very open, inclusive, fun to be with group. We are so excited to have Erica on board. And Carol, I have to say, we're so excited to be included in this event to promote what it is that we do, and who we are. So thank you so much for having us. And I'll answer questions.
We are going to go on to the next section, which, is me. Thank you, Lee. Thank you very, very much. We just heard from 2 amazing organizations, the Agritourism Marketing Office with NCDA, and the North Carolina Agritourism Networking Association. I'm going to briefly touch base with these on these organizations. Oh, I added another one on there, but they didn't show up, but that's okay. We will I will just talk about them. One of our participants added in the Farm to Fork event that happens every year. That event is put on by the Center for Environmental Farming Systems. So I just want to briefly cover some organizations that their sole mission is not agritourism, but they do have programs that relate to agritourism. And CEFS, the Center for Environmental Farming Systems, is one of those. You can have access to this presentation, and so you'll be able to click on these links. The Conservation Fund Resourceful Communities Program, great program. It's been around for a while. They focus on the triple bottom line. They focus on community-led initiatives. They focus on community land ownership. They focus on Black and Brown land ownership. So they focus on rural programs. And so all of their programs really are part of natural resource management, in which farms are certainly a part. So I do recommend you can check them out. Hessa, you may or Taylor, whoever has access to the presentation, you may want to click on the links yourself and then drop them in the chat as you are able to. The Appalachian Sustainable Agricultural Project, again, one of my heroes. We really like ASAP. They work in Western North Carolina. They serve Western North Carolina, and they do all sorts of farm-related market development. So they started tailgate markets in Western North Carolina. They have a business of farming conference every February, January-ish. They do workshops on agritourism. Again, they do lots of CSAs, all the things related to ag. Appalachian Sustainable Agricultural Project, ASAP, does that. Carolina Farm Stewardship Association, that was also brought up earlier in the chat. They do help farmers develop alternative markets, and sometimes agritourism is considered an alternate or alternative market. But their main tie to agritourism is their farm tour that they put on once a year as a fundraiser for CFSA. They specialize in small farms and organic farms, but they cover the entire state. RAFI is actually an international organization. The U.S. Chapter, if you will, is based in North Carolina, and they also work with all kinds of farming issues and programs. One of the programs I particularly like, and it's not necessarily agritourism related, but just to show you the type of work they do, if a farmer is denied a grant or admission into a government program that they are clearly qualified for, RAFI will take up the mantle and help represent them so that they don't feel alone sort of fighting and appealing a decision like that for their farm. NAFTMA has been around a while. It's a super clunky name acronym. North American Farmer and Direct Marketing Association. And you can see from this icon that's screenshot here, now they just go by International Agritourism Association, which is much clearer. That is what they do. I still think they focus mainly on North America, but they probably have some members outside of North America. Like NCANA, Lee's organization, they are a membership-based association. So you pay dues to join, and then you have the association representing your interests, and they have very special resources for their members. You've heard me say this organization or that organization has been around a while. I say that because that sort of experience, that sort of institutional knowledge is so valuable. They have a bank of resources, a bank of connections, and a bank of lessons learned. And so the members, it's not just joining the organization and the organizational resources that are helpful, but learning from the other members that are part of the association and who have been through this situation or that situation and can give their advice. So this slide, I'm gonna just stop for a second and really take some time here. This is sort of the heart of my part of the presentation. Erica said something super wise earlier on about one of the reasons why you do partner. And she said basically, so you don't have to do X, Y, Z all by yourself. And sharing the load is absolutely a legitimate reason, even if that's your only reason for partnering. That is such a legitimate reason. But there's so many other benefits that can come from community involvement. First of all, packaging and bundling what you offer with someone else, what someone else offers. Someone else offers something that you don't offer. Bundling those two things together, well, that just enhances both of your product, both of your experiences. So community involvement really can extend what you are offering to the public. It extends your product line without you having to actually make more or produce more experiences. Getting involved with the community and learning what other people do in the community and having them learn what you do. I think one of the most important benefits from this is it reduces potential friction. I know that I have worked with farmers in the past that have done their farming thing, the production, the marketing, taking stuff to market, whether it's, a retail or a wholesale situation. But then all of a sudden they enter into agritourism and people are coming to their farm. So rather than the product always going out, now the customer is coming in to the product. That's a whole different ball game for the neighbors. So there's a traffic pattern. People are saying, what's going on? Maybe there's a little envy going on. And so already getting out ahead of that and being involved in the community, I think is really going to reduce any potential friction that could come from a new venture. Certainly, if you are involved in your community, whether it is another farm or a bed and breakfast or a restaurant or a retail store, you all can cross-market each other. And cross-marketing costs $0. And $0 is just about right for a lot of the marketing budgets with starting agritourism farmers. So, that's a benefit that can come from communicating with and collaborating with others in the community. And I've listed a bunch of just sort of examples of community stakeholders that you might want to collaborate with. The very end one in that blue box is your destination marketing organization. This is a very, very, very important person in your community. I want to stop just for a second, and you can do this silently in your head, or you can put it in the chat. But I want everyone to think about, first of all, okay, what county am I in? I know you know the answer to that. And then I want you to say, okay, who is the person that is in charge of tourism for my county? They may be at the Chamber of Commerce. They may be at something called a Tourism Development Authority. They may be at a visitor bureau. They might be part of the Economic Development Office. I don't think we have a lot of that anymore. But there's a person in your county, in every county, some counties have more than one person who is in charge of marketing the destination. And so the generic term is destination marketing organization. That person needs to know who you are. That person needs to know what you are offering. And so back in the day when I worked for Tourism Extension, that was my number one job, is making sure everyone in the farming community knew who the destination marketing organization was, and making sure the DMO representative knew all the folks in the farming community, because it's their job to market the resources, the tourism resources, in their own county, in their own service area. So again, another great reason to get out there in the community and press the flesh. That is such a weird expression. Another reason I think it's valid that you would want to be involved in the community, or rather maybe it's a benefit that comes from it, is that you portray a united front. People who are in the same business, and we're talking about tourism at this point, if y'all don't know about each other, but you're in the same area, you might look like you don't know what's going on. You might look like you're not talking to each other. I'll give you this as an example. North Carolina has 16 public universities. 7 of them have hospitality and tourism programs. I know who the contacts are at those 7 programs. It's good for us all to know each other, because then we can work stuff out. We can solve problems, peer-to-peer learning, but we also portray that we're a united front. There's no infighting. There's no like, oh, we're better than UNC Greensboro or blah, blah, blah. And so portraying that united front to a stranger, a tourist coming in, that just gives the community a nice warm feel. Generating new ideas, your new ideas, their new ideas, our new ideas. I love working with other people because I am not the smartest person in the room. I work very hard, but I love learning from other people and their creativity. Certainly, the emotional part of it for me is very, very important. I love the moral support. It's that feeling of not just sharing the load, which is important, but like not having to think, oh my God, I've got to do this by myself. It's the emotional component of that. Knowing I don't have to do it alone, and knowing I can share the load. It does make it more fun if you're working with people who you enjoy. Sometimes it even makes it feel like not work at all. And then also another perception and sort of psychological, emotional piece. Some farmers have a reputation for being independent, and you, and sometimes that reputation might spill out into the community. Oh, I don't know if you want to work with Lee. She just really likes doing things by herself. That's not the reputation Lee has. And so I think, that's just another probably more minor benefit. But if you get out there and get involved in your community, people see you as collaborative, and they'll think of you the next time. Oh, I want to do something with somebody. I think I'll call Lee because she's really into like doing stuff together. So I made a reference earlier about packaging and how one reason to get involved in your community is that it can enhance your product. Any kind of packaging is bundling together different sorts of experiences. And this is something we do in the tourism world all the time. It does not mean that necessarily that you're discounting your price, all 3 or 4 pieces of the bundled experience. It doesn't necessarily mean that, because some consumers are very, very happy just to pay the retail price just wrap it up in a bow for me. So I don't have to go to 3 or 4 different websites and think and make these decisions and plan. If you could just tell me what to do, if you could give me the itinerary, if you could give me the package, yes, happy to just, click, here's my credit card. It does remind me that Uplift is doing some really great itinerary building workshops. Jennifer from Culture Queens was at one of them last week, and we had a really good time building itineraries. This is again that form of partnership. There was one that centered around. Thank you. There was one that centered around food. There was one that centered around farming, and we're doing this in each of the regions around the state where we are working. So this particular package that's depicted here, this is a package that includes an Airbnb in the blue, your farm in the red, and then tickets to a show going on at the blah, blah, blah theater. Okay. That can be packaged together, working just with the 3 partners there, and can be on every single website that's represented: the Airbnb, the farm, and the theater. Next slide. We've got a couple more examples of packages. Up in the upper right-hand corner, I love food. I always like to think about food. And so if you're going to offer me a food culinary getaway, yep, I'm in. It's going to include some wine. It's going to include a farm to table experience at your farm. Don't worry, you don't have to do farm to table. That's just an example we use. Maybe it's coming in and maybe it's coming into your farm as a setting, and whatever your main crop or whatever your main product is, you could have someone come in and do a demonstration. If you grow pumpkins, well, show me how to make some pumpkin bread. If you grow zucchini and other vegetables, great, let's make pizza. Zucchini bread is also good. Ooh, chocolate zucchini bread. I mean, when Erica was talking about sweet potatoes earlier, I was like, this is really rough because it's 5 to 6 o'clock, super hungry. We're just talking about food, my favorite foods. So a culinary experience for a visitor, you don't have to do the whole thing. You can just be one piece of 4 things that they do. And the bottom diagram there, that is depicting, obviously, a music festival being held on your farm where you have food trucks come in. Now, yes, Jennifer was talking about events earlier. Events take so much planning. They are so much work. So I don't mean to oversimplify this and make it sound like, this is so easy. You just make a couple phone calls and boom, it happens. Lee alluded to all of the different logistical things you need to think about, but, starting small, doing it once, seeing how it goes, doing it again the next year, maybe then moving to doing two things a year. This is and learning from the partnerships as well as learning from how the event actually goes. So this is a lot of words. Choose a bullet, read a couple of these bullets. These are other examples of how you might partner or network with others in your community. Let's look at all the way at the bottom, government agencies, nonprofits, and chambers of commerce. You have those in your community. Well, they have to have meetings. They have to have fundraisers sometimes if they're a nonprofit. And they have events. So if you approached all of those entities and said, hey, I've got a farm, we've got a shelter, we have some places for you to come have a casual lunch, take your employees out, network, what am I trying to say? Staff appreciation lunch. There's any number of events that your farm could probably host, even if you don't have a very fancy building or structure. Again, start small. You can have a picnic. That'd be fun. I am all about asking people in the community to come to your farm and do demonstrations or sell their products. I am not all about asking people in the community to come do something for free, like will you donate your, will you donate 10 alpaca hats? Just like you wouldn't want to go somewhere and work all day for free for the exposure, the potential exposure for your farm. Think about how you all might either compensate one another with a small hourly wage, or do pro bono. If you artist come to my farm and do a demonstration, I, farmer, will come to your gallery or studio and do something, another type of demonstration or a talk on something I am an expert on. There are a lot of ideas. And I guess at this point, let me stop just for a minute, because I do want to ask you, are there like one or two examples of how you network and collaborate? And I will ask Hessa and Taylor if there are examples of that in the chat to shout it out. So I was talking about the DMO earlier, the Destination Marketing Organization, and this is sort of the culmination of community involvement and partnering in the tourism world. A familiarization tour is when intermediaries, is the word I like to use, intermediaries come to your farm or to your community to learn about it so that then they could sell it better. I love using the example of my iPhone. I can sell me an iPhone because I love my iPhone. I know all the things that I love about it. I can tell you all the tricks and bells and whistles. I can sell an iPhone. I cannot sell an Android because I don't know how they work. Don't know it. Everybody has maybe a favorite brand of shoes or whatever. And we can sell those brands. The same thing is in the tourism industry. If we have these travel intermediaries, travel media, tour operators, travel advisors, which used to be called travel agents, tour guides, if we have these intermediaries that stand in the supply chain of tourism, here's the site, the destination, and here is the potential visitor. There's a whole supply chain in there. It's not only about selling directly. You can use the supply chain to help sell your product. And so how do you do that? You need to make sure that the supply chain knows about you through FAM tours. The best way to get on a FAM tour is to network with your local DMO. Okay, that's the best way. This is just a very snippet. This slide probably creates more questions and answers, but we will, Uplift will be doing a lot of programming on FAM tours in the coming 6 months. Okay. We will take questions now if there are any in the chat, or if anybody has anything in mind. Love it. Well, and I see Dr. Capps is here.
Again, thank you so much for having me. I'm here to talk a little bit about storytelling, which is something I'm passionate about, and I've researched in. So I think it ties in really nicely with the conversation that y'all have been having. So first of all, storytelling, we all hear it, we tell stories, but it's really a fundamental part of our existence. If you think back to when you were a child and someone was telling you fairy tales, there was usually a message of warning, a message of encouragement rooted in those fairy tales. And that's how we pass information on to each other in a way that's readily able to be recalled. So we've seen storytelling come through oral traditions, through literature, as we forward into marketing, into digital media. And they continue to have this inspiration and ability to resonate with us emotionally. And so today we're going to talk about storytelling, exploring its value, how it sort of impacts us as individuals, what the cultural significance is, and how it has potential to be really transformative in tourism spaces. And then I included one of my favorite quotes at the bottom. So we are as a species addicted to story. Even when the body goes to sleep, the mind stays up all night telling itself stories. And I think that just really goes to show how deeply rooted storytelling and narrative is ingrained in all of us. So the question I get asked a lot is, what's the value of storytelling and how do you quantify the value of storytelling? I could tell you the greatest story about myself growing up, but what value does that have to you or your life? So interestingly enough, Taylor, there was a study done called Significant Objects, and there was a group of folks that went to thrift stores and bought random things, usually about $1 a piece. And what they did is they worked with a network of creative writers, and creative writers were assigned an object, and they wrote a story about this object. And then the object and the story were then put on eBay and resold to see if we could find the actual tangible value of the story. And so what happened, if you want to click on the next one, the original price of this apple pie container was 99 cents. The story increased its value to $62.95, one more, which is a 6,395% increase. I do teach in a business college, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that that's a pretty significant increase in value, and we'd all like to sort of harness the power of that. And a lot of this comes down to what storytelling does in our body and how we respond to it physically and psychologically. And storytelling really hits a few of the key components in terms of our neurological response. And the first one is oxytocin. It's the love hormone. It creates empathy, trust, and bonding. And what happens through storytelling is this bonding happens through a technique called mirroring. So listeners experience similar brain activity as the storyteller. So you're on the same wavelength, quite literally. And then it hits your endorphins. We all have heard runner's high, or this idea that these endorphins relieve pleasure. It's also where we make and rationalize decisions. And this becomes particularly important in marketing, as you want people to make emotional decisions a lot of times. Logic cannot be the best friend of business sometimes. So you want people to do something because they're passionate about it, they're interested in it, they have emotional pull towards it. So elevating endorphins through storytelling really drives that emotional consumer behavior, which makes them participate in activities or buy products and engage emotionally with those things. And then dopamine, it's an elaborate learning system, and it allows us to become aroused or engaged in stories. And that arousal, the more profound it is, the longer people will stick with your message and your storytelling, and the longer they'll remember it as you continue on. So there are actually psychological benefits to telling a great story. As tourists or consumers onboard those, they are changed by your story. And so our apple pie container was 99 cents. Was it a one-off, or did we find value in all of the objects that stories were rooted, that were told to? So the total objects was 100 objects, and they spent $129 on them. Anybody guessing of how much we made? We might have let the cat out of the bag there, but over $8,000 was made in total revenue once we attached storytelling to those objects. So how do they do that, and how can we do it in tourism? And so the goal here is to take the subjective value of something, a tourist experience, and turn it into objective value. And we do that a couple ways. And the first one is to focus on crafting stories that are reflective of the culture and heritage. So they make sense to the operation. Two, they're based or rooted in tourism success factors, which I'll share with you shortly. And they're anchored in personal narratives. And the relationship between personal narratives and cultural narratives is really important, as we'll sort of unpack in the next couple slides. So my research, like I said, is in storytelling, particularly in distillery tourism, which in and of itself is a heritage tourism activity. And so I did a bunch of research, and I went through years of literature trying to understand what the key tourism success factors that people could use in stories were. And two things came to light through that, and I'll save you all the gory details of a 123-page research paper. But some of the key factors that were really impactful for storytelling and heritage tourism are place authenticity, place history, personal history, and certainly uniqueness, what makes something unique. The other thing that really came to light is who is telling the story, and how they are telling the story is equally as important as the content. So the idea of the storyteller having empathy or being someone that they can relate to and you can relate with, and that they feel authentic, that they don't feel like someone who just showed up with a script and started telling you about a bunch of things that don't seem genuine or don't seem impactful. So telling a story that's rooted in personal narratives of place, history, and certainly showcasing all those unique elements that your location brings, and then finding a person who can deliver that story with passion, enthusiasm, and sincerity really creates a robust way to articulate a story that will hit all of those dopamine, endorphin, and oxytocin receptors for your listeners. So we'll start with personal narratives. So personal narratives are crucial. They're how we shape our self-identity. The way we tell stories and the way we onboard other people's stories shapes who we are. It affects our behaviors, our visions, our values, and really starts to make who we are relevant to us and to the world around us. And by sharing a personal story, you start a connection of empathy and identity with another person. And that's why narratives are so impactful, especially when they're personal. You empathize with someone, you see them as a unique individual. And we construct meaning in how we go about the world through interacting with other folks. And so these stories provide a sense of purpose for us. They influence our interactions. And the greatest thing, and I think in tourism, is personal narrative provide anchors for people if they don't have a history in this place. And I saw that with new distilleries popping up in regions like Kentucky or Ireland that are rich in heritage. How do they use stories if they don't have this robust canon of great-great-grandfathers that have been distilling for 300 years? Well, the personal narrative can be what drew them to that area, what drew them to bourbon or whiskey in general. And that personal narrative can still be authentic and still root you to the place. So it's a really good way to leverage, turn something into a strength that may not have been there from the beginning, especially if you're competing with other entities that have a lot more longevity. And then if personal narratives are the anchor, cultural narratives are the boat, there's this big canon of ideas that are rooted in sort of a collective psychology. And they form collective identity within the community. And you can see this as myths, histories, folklore, they're passed down through generations, through oral histories. And often they're rich with personal stories. And that connection between personal and cultural narratives is really where tourism operators can start to shine, especially when we're talking about things like marginalized communities, rural communities, underrepresented communities. It's a tool for empowerment. It can help people reclaim voices, assert change, and call for social action. But with all of these great ideas, tourists are inundated with all of this information. They have a lot of stories about places. And that's where that personal narrative becomes so important because it anchors the cultural narrative back to a person for ease of recall. So you can see my little diagram over here. My cultural narrative is the boat and empathetic personal narrative is the anchor. And how do you bridge the gap? So your individual story is the anchor of that larger regional heritage or concept, and it showcases personal experiences, traditions, and perspectives that really lead to this rich tapestry that everybody builds. And this offers a more intimate and authentic way to introduce and understand the destination. Instead of understanding all these great things that every destination have, through talking through one person, they can get a deeper understanding and an empathetic understanding of what it's like to live in those spaces. And then the story humanizes people. Personal story humanizes people. It connects to the history, the passions. It becomes really engaging for visitors. And it creates connections that allow tourists to appreciate local customs, traditions, and natural resources because they see empathetic value in those things. So connecting those two things becomes really, really important. So I brought an example just to bring this all together because we can talk about things from a theoretical perspective, but how do you actually put this into action? So here's the story. So imagine you grew up in a rural village nestled in the mountains of Appalachia, and you share memories of listening to your grandfather about working in the mines, the struggles, the triumphs they faced. And you understand how this strong sense of community built this coal mining family. You talk about coal mining festival that happened, the live music you heard, the crafts that were also shared at this festival. And you get to understand what living in that coal mining family would have been like in Appalachia. So in sharing your personal narrative, you have now shared a little bit about yourself, your upbringing, your family connections, but you also shed light on these broader, more historically significant ideas of how coal mining shaped a region and what the challenges the region may have faced or successes the regions may have faced because of it. And it really leads to that big picture thinking, but you're rooted in tangible emotions because you know how you would feel sitting there listening to your grandfather talk about those things. So you offer tourists a deeper understanding of Appalachia's identity and heritage through this storytelling. And as a visitor to this area, you'd gain insight into sort of the resilience, how people overcame a lot of these things, what their values were, what made them important, and how that's changed and shaped the region that we know today. And all of these great things they remember because of your grandfather's story. So that's the anchor. That's the root that you go back to every time you start thinking about these things. And then storytelling, the end period. Your individual story serves as a gateway for tourists to explore and appreciate the deep layers of the region. It's an enriching experience. It provides a sense of connection, and it really empowers people to be stewards of their destination. And as someone who loves stories and who loves travel, those are the things we remember when we go home. When I visited Italy, I remember going to a little co-op that sold homemade wine and cheese. And I talked to this lady in very bad Spanish because that's the only thing that could bridge the gap between my English and her Italian. And I spent 30 minutes having the best time of my life in a moment that was somewhat underwhelming compared to all the other things that, we encountered. But those are the times you remember how you felt, how that experience made you feel. And that's the value. That's when you go back to the value of significant objects. The value of an experience lies in the stories that we tell. Anybody have any questions?
Holy smokes, I'm glad I asked Danny to come talk about this. I mean, I would have just said, y'all, stories are really important. That was amazing. That was so good.
Well, thank you. I'm also happy. I love, using storytelling and hospitality. So I hope it helps, and that y'all find ways to create and cultivate great stories in your destinations.
Your message was just absolutely fantastic, and I learned a lot from it.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. If anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out.
Otherwise, thank you for being with us. Session number 4. We are almost home, and Savage will bring us back to best practices next week. Wanted to do a quick commercial though for storytelling tips, tricks, tactics, and techniques. Please scan this QR code to learn more about this Uplift program. It's coming in June. It is only 6 hours of your time, and you will be taken through a process where you will learn how to tell your story and actually create your narrative. In the end, you will have a site manual. If you do your homework, you will have a site manual that we will print for you. It'll be slick, it'll be sexy, it'll be a hard copy, and you'll be able to share it with lots of your staff or volunteers so that they can know the story to tell as well. Next slide. A complimentary program is Hellos and Highlights. If you scan this QR code, you will learn about our program where we will come out and videotape you telling a 90-second blip about your site and why visitors should come to you. This is a completely free program, except that you need to invest your time and crafting your narrative so that when we come out and videotape you, you're all set. We will then edit that, and you've got a 90-second video to use on your website. It can also be linked with itineraries or given to your DMO. And finally, just a reminder, please come to see us next week for the last session. And thanks for hanging in there. With that, thank you again to our speakers, Danny, Lee, Erica, me. Thank you all so much for being here. I think it was fabulous. I think it was high energy. Loved everything I learned from the other 3 speakers. And again, Anne will be back next week to bring us home.